So today we're going to see how badly we can torture a text and still try to say we're honoring what the text says. So you may have well guessed we're going to be looking at a video from Dr. Michael Heiser. This is the absolute worst torture of a text that I think I've ever seen in my life. This is incredible. I'm Steve Perry, this is Biblical Anarchy, and this right here is the kind of thing that my whole idea for the website was to work against stuff like this. With people taking a text and telling you, it doesn't mean what it clearly says, it means some other thing that they clearly made up. So here's Dr. Michael Heiser talking about in Ezekiel. Now the problem in Ezekiel is you have a third temple. In the third temple, there are sacrifices that are made. Sacrifices are supposed to be over. They're not supposed to happen anymore. Now, to be fair, a lot of Christians deal with this in a much different way, and they say that these are memorial sacrifices. They're meant to kind of flash back to when the Jewish people did their sacrifices, and these are just like memorials. They don't have real meaning. They don't atone for sin. And then there's this view. It's Dr. Michael Heiser's. Here's what he has to say on it.
The scholars have long noted that Ezekiel 40 through 48, which is the famous temple vision of Ezekiel, contains elements that can be read as an architectural plan that makes literal sense. So it has that in it. But it also has elements that make no literal sense. Okay, things like there's no roof. You're not going to build a real temple with no roof because it will be defiled when birds, poop on it when they're flying over and other dirt comes in. You don't do that. That's not the way you do, a literal temple enclosure. Even the tabernacle, was covered, with tarps and so on and so forth. And the Jerusalem temple in Solomon's day, it had a roof. That's gone in Ezekiel 40 to 48. Also, you have certain tabernacle temple pieces of furniture, like the Ark of the Covenant, that are not in Ezekiel 40 through 48.
Okay, did I go too far with the feathers? Was it too soon? I mean, okay, so Ezekiel never describes the roof. I don't think he ever says there isn't a roof. He just doesn't describe the roof, so therefore it can't be a physical temple. And I was thinking to myself, how do I get across to someone who maybe sees this as a legitimate point of view? How do I get across to you, like, how offensive this is to someone like myself? Now, I'm not angry with the guy. I'm just saying that this is torturing the text. How do I make that point? Now, imagine for a second, because he says that he thinks Ezekiel's talking about Jesus. You're going to see that in the next clip. Now, imagine for a second that this temple that is described by Ezekiel, imagine if he said, I saw a man standing there, and I measured his height, and he was 6 foot tall, and he had 2 arms and 2 legs, and in his hands there were holes, wounds where he had been pierced through, and there were matching wounds in his feet. And behind him stood a large mass of people from all the nations who were all worshiping the God of Israel. And of course, Dr. Michael Heiser would say, it's got to be Jesus in the church. And imagine if I said, well, it can't be Jesus because he doesn't describe eyes, and humans have eyes. He doesn't tell us what color his eyes are. Therefore, it can't be Jesus, so he must be talking about a temple. And he said, but what about the holes in the hands and the feet? Well, those are windows. Temples have windows in them. But what about the group of people? Like, you would say, Steve, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. And you'd be right. He goes on.
So scholars are divided on the meaning of the passage and how it would be fulfilled. Now, my take, which again is not going to be a surprise, is I believe that the future temple is and was intended to be by Ezekiel, was Jesus in the body of Christ, the body of Jesus, which is us, because this is how the New Testament describes temple. This is the New Testament temple talk. And it explains a number of things.
Now, you notice why he thinks it's Jesus. Because the New Testament says so. Not because anything in Ezekiel, right? But because the New Testament says so. Okay. But what if someone comes along and tells us something that doesn't match up with what we already know? Does it say, well, then reinterpret what the prophets have already said? Or does it say to reject when someone comes along and tells us something that isn't true by what we already know? There's nowhere in Tanakh where it says, hey, there's going to be a progressive revelation, so don't hold fast to the things you've learned right now. Instead, when you go to, for example, Deuteronomy 13, it says, anyone that's going to lead you out of the way that I've told you to walk. Well, he just got done giving them a law and told them this is the way that you're to walk and conduct yourself. It's almost as if God knew that the Apostle Paul was going to come along and say, don't follow the law. He's going to lead you out of that way, because right there in Deuteronomy 13, it says, even if he does signs and wonders, I'm just letting him do them to test you, right? Nowhere does it tell us that, hey, there's going to be a whole nother revelation to come along later, so don't lock any of this stuff in stone, right? Somebody's going to come along and give you the real meaning of this stuff later. It's not the case. That's what Dr. Michael Heiser wants us to believe is the case, but it certainly doesn't say that in Tanakh.
The way history plays out in our own lifetimes, Jerusalem may get a temple, I don't know. If they do, I don't think it's the fulfillment of any prophecy, but, I'd be in favor of it because it's their land and they ought to be able to worship in a temple if they want to. I just don't see Old Testament prophecy being fulfilled that way, again, because of what the New Testament does with it.
Because of what the New Testament does with it, right? He does. In the Old Testament, I just gave you an example the other day in a video of Isaiah saying, hey, this guy's going to hear a rumor, get scared, run home, and die by the sword. And what happens? The guy hears a rumor, gets scared, runs home. His son stabbed him in the temple, run him through with a sword. It wasn't like, oh, okay, now we got to figure out, what did he mean? Is the sword a lightning strike and it hits a temple? By hear a rumor, does he? None of that. It's obvious, right? This is how prophecy is fulfilled. But because of what the New Testament does with it, well, you're right. Suddenly in the New Testament, prophecies become vague and obscure. So now it's not a building, it's a body and a group of people and all this. But that's not the way prophecy is given in Tanakh, folks. That's not the way it's treated in Tanakh. If that's the case, then prophecy becomes completely unfalsifiable. If I can give a whole prophecy about a temple, and this temple is going to be built, and this and that's going to happen, and then just say, oh, well, the prophecy's been fulfilled because that guy's the temple, then prophecy is completely unfalsifiable. Why would Deuteronomy 13 even exist, where we're supposed to test the prophets to make sure that what they're telling us is true? Well, how can we test the prophets and make sure what they're telling us is true if a building can become a person and a city can become a group of people? How am I supposed to test that? It means nothing. It means whatever somebody tells me it means later. It becomes completely unfalsifiable.
So the Lord says, when the glory comes back, it'll be, key word here, forever. I would suggest to you that if a temple gets rebuilt today, and there is no temple at the end of the book of Revelation, but like something happens to that temple, that's in defiance of this passage.
He's 100% right. That's in defiance of this passage. So what? We should accept it and change the meaning of what we've already been given? No. If something defies what we've already been given, then we reject it, don't we? Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Stone that man to death but I'm not recommending that. But if you go with Deuteronomy 13 and somebody comes along and tells us a new thing that we and our fathers have not known, we're not supposed to change what we already know to match up what this new guy has told us. I mean, for the life of me, how can you torture a text that badly? I don't know. Now, like I said, this is not, I don't know what the majority view is in Christianity, but this is not the only view. There are clearly Christians who read it this way. Dr. Michael Heiser is not on an island by himself. But there are also a lot of Christians who say, no, there has to be a third temple. Ezekiel prophesied it. Again, they see a lot of this as memorials and this, that, and the other. It gets a little difficult because it says no one can enter the temple unless they're circumcised of the heart and of the flesh. So clearly the law is still being followed at that time. It's one of those hard things to get around. So if you're Dr. Michael Heiser, this is the way to get around it. We'll just say, it doesn't mean a temple. It means a person or a group of people, or, I can't try to explain it. I don't know that I can rescue a text that's been tortured that bad, other than to say, read Ezekiel for yourself. Start in chapter 40, that's where the temple talk starts. Read the whole thing for yourself and tell me that you can walk away from it concluding that it's talking about a man, the human body. It doesn't have a roof, but it has walls, windows, doors, gates. None of these are features of a human or a group of humans. So, I don't know what to tell you other than if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media. Don't just sit there, do something.